Hey, it's Tess. I just wanted to come live today, and I'm still kind of working out of this Oprah Winfrey book. And just to go back to start a little bit, for those that don't know me, I'm a bariatric patient. I am six years. Where'd 6 years come from? I'm entering my 10th year post-surgical. That journey was the beginning of changing all areas of my life in the 10 years since that surgery. I've lost half my weight. I've changed the way I work. I left the W-2 world. I'm trying to help people with an insurance product to learn a banking process that I learned as I spent some time studying during the lockdown period. I became an author about a month ago. This is Courage to Change. And I'm approaching life differently and trying to live it differently. And I've been looking at this book by Oprah Winfrey. It's just a journal. And journaling is something I never did post-lockdown or pandemic. Again, I don't know why my face is so close in this video, but for some reason it is today. So hello, up close and personal. But today I was looking at something called vulnerability. And it hit me because I think it's really important and something that's misunderstood in a lot of ways. And the reason I was thinking about it is, in order to change your life, and I almost think I would have done something, maybe for the next book, this idea of vulnerability will come up. If you're not vulnerable, you're not open to change. If you're not open to change, you go down the same path that you've always done. And what I found interesting about vulnerability is it's kind of a avenue of self-discovery, or trying to be open that, you know, you might find out that something you thought was wrong and that you need to learn something new. And the reason that hit me is part of what I'm trying to do right now is to educate people on the use of specially designed and engineered whole life policies with a high cash value for lots of other things. Mutually owned companies, they're non-direct recognition. There's a lot of things about this, but if you're interested, please give me a DM with your email and I'll reach out and I'll kind of get you going down the avenue. But there's so much about that process that I didn't learn until the past 10 years when I found new people to question, to be vulnerable and to say, I don't know, how can I learn more? And the reason that I was thinking about this is I've recently been trying to figure out next steps for myself. And it reminded me of a time in my life, like my dad having two children, and they were both girls. He felt a very strong need to tell us what to do till we hit 18 years old. And then at 18 years old, he was like, you're on your own. And I can remember having a talk with him one day and saying, look, I don't want you to tell me what to do, but I like to weigh out options, and I'm coming to you because I want your opinion. Know that I'm going to make my own best decision, but I'm asking you to share with me what you think before we get down the road and you say you shouldn't have done that. So we had to work through that, and we did work through that. And I recently had that happen too. Part of the crew I hang around with. One of them, I went to them and said, I just want you to kind of be a sounding board for me. And they were great. Again, they wouldn't tell me what to do, which I knew was the case. And the other one right out of the gate was afraid to say much of anything and said, I can't tell you what to do. But it made me realize that that's the battle that we fight when we're trying to educate people on this idea of the infinite banking process. We are going against what people always knew. We don't want to tell you what to believe, but in order for you to be open to learn something new, you've got to be vulnerable. And then I have to be willing to share with you what I know, but to give you the tools so you can educate yourself. And I think that's what hit me so much about it, because I can remember at different times in my life, even recently within the past 2 weeks, where I've gone to people and I've been vulnerable and said, hey, I'd like to know what you think. Not because I wanted them to tell me what to do, but if I heard what they had to say, it might give me some direction. So I thought that was really important, because everything I want to do now, I need the person on the receiving end to be vulnerable, to be open that what they think they know may not be true any longer, and that there might be something they want to check into and learn. Now, I'll give them the tools to learn, and then I can help them on their journey. They do have to invest in the journey so that they can make the journey work, but there's a vulnerability in admitting and thinking that there could be a better way that you don't know. And I almost feel like it shouldn't be a vulnerability, because I believe that we should continually be learning all throughout our lives. I often, and I say it all the time, I think that I know the brain is a muscle. And because the brain is a muscle, I think continuing to learn, continuing to educate, and continuing to use it will help it stay active longer in your life. So that's who I want to be. So I looked up information on vulnerability because that is the section here in this journal, vulnerability. And like I said, for me, it is an obstacle that I do overcome because often if I go to people asking for them to help me on my journey of self-discovery, depending on what it is I'm talking to them about, the first red flag that always goes up is I can't tell you what to do. Well, in my case, I'm not asking to be told what to do, but I want to know what you think, because then that goes into the pool of things that I'm considering as I move forward. And I realized that most people aren't even willing to be vulnerable to be open to a new possibility. And that's where there's a opportunity for all of us to be vulnerable so that we can have self-discovery, so that we can learn a new way. And that is what the infinite banking process was for me. I had to learn a completely new way, and I had to be open to what I had been doing for 30 years might have avenues on it that I had never seen or understood to be in existence prior to that. And I'll tell all of you, that was a hard journey for me to spend 30 years in an industry and think that there was something as helpful as what I do now and what I'm trying to share with the world that I never knew about. And I had to be vulnerable, and I had to go down a journey of self-discovery, and I had to inquire, and I had to look for personal growth. And that's what everybody will have to do if they want to go down that journey. And again, if you are interested, please send me a DM with your email and I can get you started down the journey. But vulnerability is the root of self-discovery. It's personal growth. It allows us to be open to new experiences and learn from our mistakes. And we all, mistakes, fear, it's all opportunities to go in a different direction. Too often in my life, I looked at it as fear, as mistakes, that I'd wasted time, and I didn't understand that had I done it a lot more frequently and a lot more often, I'd have got a lot further, a lot faster. So there were obstacles that blocked me, and they blocked me because I was not vulnerable to self-discovery and inquiring of those around. And I was thinking about it, even when I'm open to that and I reach out to people vulnerable and say, hey, what do you think? Even sometimes we're afraid to share with each other because we're not sure that the person we're communicating with is open to hear that. And that is probably one of the best gifts we can give ourselves, is to be vulnerable, because that's when we can have that opportunity for self-discovery and find a path maybe that we didn't know existed that could change our lives in ways that we never dreamed possible. So, vulnerability is self-discovery, it's personal growth, it's allowing you to be open so that you can learn from any experiences that you've had so you can make better decisions going forward. It's about being honest. It's about being honest so that you can use it as a place of discovery. It's about letting your guard down. And I think on both sides of it, like I said, I've had cases, and my dad was the very first one out of the gate I had to deal with. If I'm coming to you, it's not because I'm going to do exactly what you said. It's because I just want your opinion as I pull together the information. But I get it. Sometimes people are afraid that you're going to take their advice and run with it and then come back and crucify them because it didn't work out the way you thought. I understand now, and I'm at a place where I understand that everything changes, and I may go down a path that's going to lead me to another path. There might be some stumbles along the way, but that is self-discovery, and I need to be vulnerable to take those wrong turns, or maybe it's a right turn just briefly, and then I'm going to have to turn out of it and head somewhere else. But I have to be open and vulnerable to take those avenues and to move down that path. So I think that's so important. And it says, so letting your guard down. And I did send you an email, Carmen, so you've got some information to start looking at, and you know I'm here for you anytime you need me. And for me, when I became vulnerable and I let my guard down and I gave myself an opportunity to learn to do things differently, I'm not going to tell you it doesn't come with some struggles sometimes, or that I don't trip over a rock from time to time, but it's led me down paths and allowed me to do things that honestly were not even goals for me. The idea of this book came because of challenges, because of, I wrote the book a couple of years ago. I started the journey and I wrote the book. People knew about the book. I had been inquiring about next steps, and it just all came together in November when a trusted friend said, you got till December 31st or I'm going to be ticked. Now, granted, I had to do the work and probably maybe would have been ticked, maybe wouldn't have been ticked, but it was just that push I needed and the right pieces came together to get me to this point. But it's things that 10 years ago I probably never would have done. I had to be vulnerable, I had to be open, I had to look for avenues, I had to talk to people, and I talked to multiple people. That's kind of why it took me so long to get it to print, because I wasn't finding the path that I felt comfortable going down or that I could financially go down at the time that the avenues were presented to me. So it's being open and vulnerable. And every time somebody came to me and I put a dedication in the book to the person who challenged me to get it done. But it's those avenues, that vulnerability, that being open, that having those conversations with people about maybe where you maybe sidestep, that allowed me to change my life. And that started right back at lockdown in first getting involved in Doc V's group and then getting involved in Chris Nagel's group and then challenging an industry that I'd worked in for 30 years. I had to be vulnerable and be willing to discover that there might be more to what I thought I knew. And that is what all of us have to do if we want to experience growth in a different way. Oh, there's Carmen. Yep, I did send it to you, so just let me know if you have questions. But it is that being vulnerable. You have to be kind to yourself as you're going through this process. You have to be open to discuss limitations. And like I said, I talked to Craig a couple days ago, and he was probably the best one at it because he wasn't forever telling me I can't tell you what to do, but he was popping questions and helping me to work through things. So what he helped me with is I have some direction to go in, but I also understand that there might be some redirection. And I just like to be able to sound things off people so that I can move forward. And I'm hoping that that part of me will be shared with the people that come to me, and maybe I can help them to find the tools that have helped me because I think for many people it will help them as well. But I needed to be vulnerable so that I could build trust and so that I could be open to new opportunities. And in the Money School crew, they always say, it's what you think you know that just ain't so. Well, how do you break down that wall of what you think you know it just ain't so? You have to be vulnerable. You have to think that maybe what you've always thought you knew was not necessarily new. And I had to do that. And I'm going to tell you that if I had to do it, I was probably the worst person to have to do that because I worked in the industry for over 30 years. I thought I knew it all. I truly went at it because I was going to prove it to be a scam. And then when I stepped back and looked at it, I'm like, these people are changing lives. And this has been going on for hundreds of years. These policies have been around forever. These insurance companies are stable. I know that from my background, from my analyzing financial statements. And I know there's a different way. And sometimes all it takes is being open to that different way. And that means you need to be vulnerable. So as I tie this up today, I'm going to go back to this Oprah Winfrey journal and I'll share one of her quotes. And I do kind of like this. I'm not using this journal. I have a couple other journals I have. But over time, I look at things and she's got like the wheel of life and vulnerability is one of them. And I just wanted to share that because vulnerability really hits me. And I know my face is getting too close in there, but vulnerability hits me because had I not been vulnerable, I wouldn't be where I'm at right now. I had to be willing to tear down everything I thought I knew and look at it differently and try to do it differently and continue to do it differently, even from where I sit today. Tomorrow may be different than it is 3 days or 3 months from now. But I have to be vulnerable that what I'm doing right now may not get me where I want to go, and that I'm willing to reach out, to ask people to learn and to try different paths until I find the one that works for me. And that's what I want to share today, because if you don't become vulnerable and open yourself to learning something different in a different way, you'll never be able to change your life. So here's this quote, and this is Oprah Winfrey. "This is everything I know to be true. For me, being vulnerable really means opening up the heart space. Your vulnerability and your openness are what allow you the confidence to know that there's no emotion you can have that somebody else hasn't already had. Vulnerability is being able to open up your soul and allow other people to see their souls reflect within your own. We all come from the same place. We all have a piece of ourselves in each other. And when we start to understand that, that vulnerability doesn't have to be so painful, because what you're experiencing or what you're feeling, the person next to you could be feeling too. They're just not willing to be vulnerable enough to open up and to share that. So they see their souls within your own. Challenge yourself to step into the space of vulnerability and open the door to greater intimacy and connection. And I think, honestly, that's where you change your life. Because for me, all the things I'm doing are not things that were on the goal list 10 years ago. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I went to the table at a BMI of 60 simply hoping to get 10 years off the bench. That's all I hoped, is that I would have some experiences in my adult life, because most had been illnesses prior to that. So all I wanted was 10 years off the bench. And now I say, you know, God's going to be slapping me, high-fiving me, telling me you might have been a late bloomer, but nicely done. And the Grim Reaper's going to be huffing and puffing 5 miles behind me because he isn't going to catch me. And that's my goal for all of you. Vulnerability may feel dangerous, but when you're around the right people, it's a good thing. And when I realized and look at my life, the changes came when I became vulnerable, when I decided to open myself up to learn new things. Now, when you get that feeling and you know it's not the right advice, or you know it's not the right person, or they're not your people, walk away, and walk away quick. But when you find the right people and you're learning from the right things, I'm not saying you follow blindly, and I'm not a person to follow blindly, and I guess that's what I have to work on when I'm asking for advice from people. I want to know what you think, but ultimately, at the end of the day, I also know I'm the one who's going to be responsible for the decisions I make. So being vulnerable and sharing, that's what mentoring and coaching is about. So I think that when you have mentors and coaches, you do have to be vulnerable so that they truly know, can help you to connect what's here, or see the things that maybe you're not seeing. Because things that people see in me are things that I didn't see in myself. I've said before that I was supposed to go to something called the program. There was only 4 of us, 4 or 5 of us. Sam Welty was added. So there were 5 of us that were going to be a part of this event. And it was going to be podcasts and shorts for, internet and all this stuff. And I was so excited about it because it was less than 1 week after I left the W2 world. And I was so excited about that. And I didn't get to go because I ended up driving out there and I got COVID. But when I look at that life and where I was headed, if it hadn't been for the lockdown and the time that I spent educating and learning, I would never have had the opportunity to go to that. I wouldn't be going live right now, because it was what happened during that pandemic time that pushed me to go live, and then pushed me not to stop. That also encouraged me to write a book, encouraged me to try to work outside of the W2 world. It encouraged all these avenues that I've gone down. I can tell you with absolute honesty that I don't know that I would have been with the people that would have helped me to find this path if it hadn't have been for that lockdown. I'm not glad we went through it. That I am not glad. But I am glad that it allowed me to be vulnerable, to open up and to see how things could be done differently. And if I can see that maybe there was more to the insurance policies that I actually could see every single day and that I accounted for and filed financial statements for, I feel like that I should share that if I could see something different, if we become vulnerable, we all might find a better way. So thank you guys for being here. Have a beautiful night, and I'll talk to you again tomorrow. Thank you. Maybe tomorrow it'll zoom out a little bit. I do not know why it's zoomed in today. All right, thanks guys, and have a great day and a beautiful day tomorrow.